Good morning, everyone that's here, and good morning to those of you over on Zoom land. We're glad you're all here. I have to read my notes. That's a nice advantage of Zoom is you could like put it up on your screen and look like you're ad-libbing it. I can't do that now, but I'm excited you're all here. If you haven't checked out our offices yet, please make sure that you do. Stay afterwards, and we'd love to give you a little tour of our offices. This is a Common Point Nonprofit Center, and we are a nonprofit co-working space with a nice conference room, and that's where we're meeting today. If you need to use the restrooms, they're down the hall on the left. If you're on Zoom, you'll have to figure that out yourself. Hopefully you have one nearby. A couple of quick announcements. First, I'm excited to tell you about our September program. Our September program will be fundraising in 2022. It's National Trends and Local Perspectives. Our moderator will be Shaki, and she's a strategic nonprofit executive. And our panelists are going to be Drew Lindsay, he's a senior writer with the Chronicle of Philanthropy, and Maria Milo, she's the executive director with Meals on Wheels for Alameda County. Erica Riddle, she's the executive director of Christy Yamaguchi's Always Dream. And Lisa Tronovich, she's the founding artistic director of Spark right here in Livermore. Then on September 27th, here in this room, we're going to be hosting a special meetings for TVNPA members presented by Shaki again. Shaki is a certified facilitator for I Am Remarkable. I Am Remarkable is a Google initiative empowering women and other represented groups to celebrate their achievements in the workplace and beyond. Women a lot of times have a hard time talking about themselves and building themselves up. And so this program is to help with that. Attendance is limited. And so sign up if you plan to attend, sign up right away when the registration goes out. And if you don't plan to attend, or maybe don't sign up, please. Or because we don't want you to take a spot for someone who does. But anyway, okay. So then November 16th, we're hosting our second Power of Giving event at the Barinque Theater. More information will go out on that next week. And but that's the end of my introduction. So I'm going to introduce Arthur. Say your last name again, please.
Barinque.
Barinque. Take this out of my head. Arthur Barinque. He's got a story about that name, but and he's presenting today. He's from CEN. Arthur's a Livermore resident. He's been involved in numerous programs, including the City of Livermore Urban Art Mural Program, Pathway to Picasso, AS1 breakdancing competition series. Wow. Mighty 4-day Boost Collaborative Conference and Arts in Schools. Arthur provides mentorship opportunities, platforms, and guidance for youth in middle school through college. He's also served on the Alameda County Arts Commission and the Livermore Arts Commission. He also sat on the board for Mighty for Arts Foundation and currently sits with the Livermore Filipino American Organization. And he's also the president for that right now. He's also an instructor for CEN. So you can tell he's a well-rounded guy with a lot of interest. We're really excited to have him here. Thank you for presenting today.
Thank you, Kathy, and thank you, Common Point, and thank you for the applause. Thank you to everyone on Zoom. I have a question. So I was ruminating about it, and the question would be, has anyone been through change in the last 2 years? I have to think about this one.
Yeah.
Hands up. Hands down. Yeah. Oh, great. Wonderful. Okay. Okay. I see it. Good. Good to know. All right. Well, we're going to talk about change today. All right. We're going to talk about leading others through change. Thank you all for that. We're living in two worlds now. If you ever thought about, I want to be in two places at once, we're doing that now as you think about it. All right. So at CEN, I just want to talk about CEN a little bit. We help leaders help themselves and help their communities. All right. We do this through our programming. We have programs, we do consultations, we have community building networks, we have cohorts, all the like. That's what we do at CEN. We at CEN also believe in land acknowledgements. We'd like to recognize the peoples that were here before genocide and colonialism and really uplift them. Here in Livermore, we're in Vulcan territory. This is from Mount Diablo and goes all the way down to this Livermore Valley. So we're here in Vulcan territory. Now, if you ever wanted to participate in giving land back, how many of us have heard of the Shuumi land tax? Okay, so the Shuumi land tax is a donation-based tax that you can donate to Segorite Land Trust, and it will help them in their mission to rematriarch the land. They're doing good things with taking care of the shell mound in Emeryville, and then also building gardens and having programs for food stability. Here at CN, we also believe in IDEAL. These are the principles we live by: inclusion, diversity, equity, access, and liberation. I'm going to ask, how many of us have heard of inclusion? I saw your hand up first. I'm going to ask you, what does inclusion mean?
Sort of equal access for everybody.
Okay, equal access for everyone. It's a sense of belonging, agency, and ownership, right? It's like being there and being part of it. Thank you for that. And I'm going to ask diversity. I'm going to ask in the back because I want to test this microphone. So can I ask you in the back corner, please?
For me, it means being mindful of thinking about, inclusion, thinking about just making things accessible for anyone, no matter, what color you are, what your background is.
Thank you for that. Yeah, so no matter your color, race, gender, socioeconomic status even, right? It's like all the ways we identify, all of that is diversity, right? Equity, it's not equality, right? It's like, it's recognizing that we start from an unequal starting place. Some of us have, some of us have not, right? But it's correcting that balance and addressing that balance and bringing that forward. Access is about information and the delivery of that, and decision-making, right? Allowing people to be part of the decision-making process, right? And liberation, this is exciting. Like, I see people's eyes light up whenever I talk about liberation. But liberation is freedom from oppression. It's having full rights and freedom. It's about showing up as your whole self, right? And so we're going to talk about leading others through change today. And I'm going to speak of it and through the ideal lens as well. Some of the objectives today are to understand change, why it fails, and some reasons for success as well, right? And then we're also going to talk about a framework to implement to lead the change efforts. Now, this is only a shortened, condensed version. We have a 3-hour version that we present. And if you'd like to see more, you can check out our website at cen.org, and you'll see the next times we'll be able to do that. So we talked about change earlier. I asked the question, right? Who here has been through change in the last 2 years? And so I want to ask, how did that feel? Lydia, how did that feel for you?
At first, related to the pandemic, it was almost panicky. And then after a while, it just became normal.
Mm-hmm. Panicky and normal, right? Okay. I like that. You can roll with that. Anyone else? Let's see. Kelly.
Well, there's a saying I always used to use, which was change imposed is change opposed. So change where you have agency and making the change is usually exciting because you have power and you're kind of leading that. But when change happens to you, then I think it can hurt people feel, uncomfortable or powerless or helpless. And so they have different kinds of things. And then just personally, I can only handle so many changes at once. Like I had life changes and I just had a big life change. And so I'm kind of, okay, nothing else right now.
Exactly, right. Hold on. Wonderful. Thank you all for the answers, right? So when change comes, you kind of take like this, you're taken aback maybe, like Lydia said, and then you can kind of figure out the flow of it a little bit, right? And then with Kelly's statements, it's like those that when you know about the change, it feels a lot better and you can move with that and flow with that, right? As opposed to if it was just instituted all of a sudden and you're like, it came out of nowhere, it dropped from the sky, right? The gods must be crazy, right? Yeah, definitely, right? So as leaders, we have to think about it in that kind of way, right? We have to look at change. It's going to affect people maybe in a negative way, right? Some people might be resistant to change. Some people might be fearful of change, right? We all went through the pandemic and everybody to each their own. They each had their way of changing and how they, how they try to flow with that, right? And so as leaders, we have to think about the positive outcomes and kind of like help usher people through the change, right? And so when we think about change, it could happen, it could happen anywhere in your organization. It could happen internally. Maybe you get funds, let's say. Let's say that you get a big grant. Woohoo, big grant, right? $250,000. You've only been operating at 50,000. That's a big change. You're gonna have to usher people through that because it's a big workload to go through, right? Or let's say that it's external like COVID, like you said, right? So maybe it's external, then we have to like figure that out too, right? And if you think about it, we have to be adaptable. If an organization doesn't change, it probably won't survive. Think about COVID again. How many organizations have survived because they've been adaptable? And then how many organizations haven't survived because they haven't been adaptable, right? So I'm going to shake it up. I think you all know I'm a shaker and mover, and some of you have heard that I, was talking about shaking, twisting, and shouting. I'm going to ask everyone to stand up. We're going to get into pairs, and we're just going to discuss this here. I'm going to give you all 2 minutes to discuss. Think of a time that you were involved in a change effort, and then what have you done well? What wasn't handled well? Talk to someone that you don't know, that you haven't met before. All right. And in the middle of it, so I'm going to give you 1 minute and then I'll do this is where I'll use the gavel and then we'll switch. Okay. Am I clear? Do I not make sense? I'm an artist, so it's like sometimes I talk weird. Does everybody get it? Great. Okay, everybody, let's stand up. Join me. Thank you all. Thank you all. How was that? All right, I'd like to hear from a few folks. So I forgot to mention, and I hope you all were listening to your partner, because I might choose you to talk about your partner. Oh no. Angie in the back, I would love to hear what you heard from Lyle.
Something that we've all really seen and felt is the change that has happened between being in person versus Zoom. Like, you can no longer really connect ideas, connect projects as you walk down the hall of your office, right? Or as you are on your way to your office kitchen, right? You lose connectivity.
Mm-hmm.
And so the observation is people are losing ideas. And they might be chopping themselves off at the knee because they might have this great idea, but they're working from home. And it's like, oh, I'll tell them later. And then they forget and time gets away. And that ultimately will hurt a business. Right? And so while working remotely has its benefits, I think we've lost a great deal. Correct me if I'm wrong.
It's sort of happening. It's just because a lot of workplace stuff, a lot of things happen very impromptu.
Yeah.
It's just spur of the moment. You're walking by, you hear something, I have an idea. And it's just in the Zoom world, things tend to be much more structured and rigid on a time schedule. And
I think that change has gone unrecognized by majority of us, right? Because the benefits of working remotely have really imploded as this great benefit for an individual. But is it a great benefit in change for the overall organization?
That's a great question. Thank you for that.
and just add one of the, it's also, the thing is, if you weren't invited to the Zoom meeting, you could feel very excluded.
Yeah, it's like you're not at the water cooler. Right.
Yeah. So somebody else is choosing the level of input you're allowed. So if you aren't just invited in the group, it's kind of, now you're like, is it like, I'm saying like middle school, like, are you in the clique or not kind of thing? So it's sometimes hard to say, I have an idea, but if you aren't invited, then your input may not be valued.
There's some great discussion there. I mean, to me, automatically, I'm thinking access. Like that goes back to ideal. You hit it right on the gavel or on the gavel on the, what is this thing, right? The gavel on the gavel, I don't know. But yeah, so that's I think a big point of access, and it's all relatively new to the world, right? So how are we dealing with this change as well? Very broad viewpoint. Thank you for that. Michael, I know your name. I heard it earlier, so I'm gonna call on it. I was like, put all the names in the head so I can call later. Michael, what did you discuss?
Yeah, so we talked about, about the workplace hiring, just people coming and going and that whole issue of trying to choose the right person for the right job even, and trying to fuse their priorities in with the business's priorities. So
Yes,
that's
yes.
some goods and some bads that come with it.
Yeah, the great resignation, right? As we all go through it, people are shifting through their jobs. And I think also workers, you hear workers are like, yeah, if I am not with this organization, then I'm gone easily, quickly now, right? So that's part of the change. How are we coping with that as organizations, right? How are we dealing with that? Definitely. So some things that cause change efforts to fail, right? Sometimes we can't keep up with this change, as Michael had mentioned, talking about hiring. What's the onboarding process like, right? Yeah, definitely. You want to make sure that you plan for that. You accommodate for that. Make sure that things are clear. If it's unclear and I'm an employee and things are unclear to me in the first month, then there's cause for concern there and I might leave, right? So when change is unclear, there's misunderstandings, right? There's lots of confusion. There can be inactivity from that. I don't know what to do, so I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to sit here, right? You're paying somebody to sit there, right? And then there could be frustration, and maybe the frustration might not even be voiced even too, right? Complacency over urgency, when it overcomes urgency. In this case, this is when you're not answering the why, right? Like not answering the question of why now. You have to answer this question, why is this change happening now? And let them know immediately, like this change is happening now, right? So that way it doesn't lead to complacency. If we don't answer that question, people will get complacent because you just kind of revert back to the mean as a human being. Well, I'm just going to sit at my standards, right? And it wouldn't be viewed as important or imperative even, right? So also, when resistance is like mismanaged, it goes back to what Kelly was saying in the beginning, right? It was like, you get sideswiped by something. Then all of a sudden it's like, oh man, I don't want to you didn't ask me for my opinion. Like, I don't want to be part of this change. And you might get some resistance if it's just being implemented automatically like that. But if you're in communication and you're talking and you're letting people know, you're giving them runway, they have time to ease into the change and it flows, right? Then you'll receive less resistance. And then, like I just mentioned, communication. If communication is limited, you're gonna fail. Communication is everything, and yes, let's bring in Lyle and Angie's thoughts from earlier, right? It's like you have to communicate with folks times 10, I say. Like you think you're communicating enough, you better communicate 10 times more, right? When it's limited. Mm-hmm.
So something else that I think is worth mentioning is as leaders, when we onboard staff, I think we can also seem unreachable, right? Until they get really comfortable, which could be 96 months in, whatever, especially now that we're doing remote so much. One thing that I've always done immediately as I onboard someone is I will take them out of the office to coffee or something very slight, casual, and go through a specific set of questions of communication and ask them, how do you like to be communicated? Email, text, phone, whatever, face-to-face meetings, whatever it is. I also let them know my communication style. So if I come right to their doorway and say, I need this, I'm not mad. I simply have someone knocking on my door, so I'm knocking on your door. I also let them know what my facial expressions mean right out of the gate, because that can be totally misread. And that goes in that communication that I think as leaders, we forget, right? Because we're so used to just doing our thing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Thank you so much for bringing up all those great topics, those great points of communication, right? Whether it's facial expressions, whether it's reaching out. It sounds like you've been on a board before and you know a little bit about onboarding processes. I mean, taking somebody out to coffee and getting to know somebody, key. Listening, key, right? So thank you so much for bringing that up. I say that, and conversely, let's talk about what helps change efforts succeed, right? Having this clear vision, making sure it's absolutely clear is necessary, right? Clear vision, because that's your guiding North Star. That's how you know where you're going. And you got to make sure you communicate that with everyone, right? As a leader, and Angie, once again, you brought up a great point, right? As a leader, you're modeling the way. So how you interact with folks, that's what you're implementing on them and how they should act, right? You talked about communication style. You talked about open door. If you're knocking on my door, I'm knocking on your door. And this two-way communication that's happening, right? Employee buy-in, critical, right? How else is this organization going to move if they're not bought in? You know, relating back to that, a few slides ago, I was like, yeah, you know, if you're sideswiped by change and employees are like, I'm resistant to that, I'm closing my arms and everything, then, and it's not happening, your organization is going to kind of move slowly, right, through this change. You got to help them, right? You got to get them to buy in. People need to be accountable, right? When you're held accountable, you move a little differently, right? If I know I have a deadline tomorrow by 5 p.m., I'm working on that to make sure that I hit that deadline, right? If it's like, oh yeah, you know, just get it to me by like the end of the week. What does that really mean? How are we defining our accountability, right? We got to make sure that it's definite, so then that way we can get people going, right? And alignment, right? When it's aligned with the mission, it just makes it easy, right? Once again, communication ×2 or ×10? Just asking out loud. What did I say earlier? ×10, right? Yeah. I'm going to talk about the 5 types of people in the change process, right? So there's the committed supporter. The committed supporter has skin in the game, right? Is 100% in and will take the risk, right? They'll like, what do you need? Oh, I'm going to do it. Let's go. Might come up with creative ideas. There's a few of these people in organizations, not many. When you identify them, those are your people. Figure out how to partner with them, be in cahoots with them. I hate to use the word use, but like how to use them. There's got to be a better word. It's just, I'm not, you know what I mean. I'm an artist. Collaborate. Perfect. See, I love the wisdom in the room.
Use them to their full potential.
Use them for their
That's
full
a good
potential.
point.
Y'all are filling in my gaps. I appreciate it so much. See what we're doing here? We're collaborating. Okay. No, so, right. So figure out how to use them to their full potential, or, you know, provide for them. So then that way they're on board and we can shift in the change, move through the change, right? Compliance supporters, they're, you know, they're not 100% such as a committed supporter, but, you know, they're there, they're proactive at the very least, right? They're bringing their whole self at least. So they're there. Maybe we can turn them into committed supporters, right? Neutral parties, and they're just, you know, sitting back. They're just watching and waiting, right? They don't take any risks. Sometimes they're not sure, but sometimes they're just neutral. It's just like, oh, another day at work, right? If we can get more of them over to the compliant, committed side, great. Neutral is still a good place though, because in comparison to maybe, let's say, the antagonist is more, I would say, on the negative or resistant side, right? So the antagonists, they're not going to take risks, right? They're going to feel actually a little bit threatened. They might not understand it. They might not like it, right? But also on another part of that coin is they might be the realist, right? So they might be like considering and like being real and looking at it in all kinds of ways, right? The best thing, once again, for an antagonist, if you can get them to neutral, that would be great. You're getting momentum, right, for this change. And then lastly is the active resistor. Now, this is like your nemesis, right? This is the nemesis to change. Maybe not yours. Let's not make it too personal, but it's the nemesis to change, right? They feel personally threatened by change. They like will resist at all costs, right? And to the point that they'll infect the group even, right? When with their resistance, and they'll like put little mind bombs in there, right? And you have to step through the minefield of resistance, right? So these people, you might have to isolate them, right?
So can we talk about this for a second in the context of like a board of directors?
Sure.
Because I'm.
Well, this is
thinking-
related to a board. Okay.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking about on a board, you generally have like the champions.
Mhm.
And then you have the people that just tend to like show up and are
Mhm.
more neutral, and then also the active resistors. So I'm just curious if anyone has any experience in that how they get the active resistor over to.
Yeah, let's open it up. So the question is, how would you get an active resistor on a board at least to neutral?
I bring him cookies. Well, it works most of the time, but then I also self-sabotage sometimes, so then they just quit. Bad cookies, huh? Yeah, making a bad cookie.
Thank you for that, cookies. Okay, Kelly.
But one thing that I tried to do is figure out what does kind of make them click or tick. And so for some people, if it's their heartstrings, some people need data. Sometimes they're resistant because they don't understand. And so I just try to find out what each person needs in order to feel comfortable with the change and then present it that way. So for some people, well, if it's a policy, okay, I'm okay with it. Or if it's the law, well, I guess I have to follow the law. But I try to figure out each person because some people will not just immediately embrace it. And so I have to do more kind of homework with them. And I try to do it more one-on-one so that it isn't a power play in public.
Thank you for that, Kelly. Yeah, definitely. So really just going one-on-one with everyone and trying to bring them to a place of neutrality, right?
So that would be like the vote before the vote.
But kind of behind the scenes, helping them through and not, and giving them plenty of, you said runway, I love that word,
Yeah.
the lead time to process
Mhm.
and get their questions answered.
Could I add
Shayna.
something? I think that's so insightful, and also being able to leverage that person once they get the light bulb moment and they're like, okay, I got the data. I get why we have to do that now. For other folks that might resist, they can become that champion that you were talking about, Kathy. I think it kind of can build on, it's like a process of sorts.
I've definitely seen that happen. I've definitely seen the active resistor turn into a champion. The process of getting there is not always the easy one, but it happens.
And when you win that person, you can kind of win over those maybe more neutral or antagonistic people, sometimes a lot easier.
I love that. Yes, thank you. So Lyle.
Yeah, so is that active resistor one, I couldn't remember your exact definition, where sometimes people almost become more like a dictator on the group, where they think,
Ooh.
they say, yes, we are a board, but only if you agree with my ideas.
Wow.
Where does that role kind of fit in?
Doesn't.
Yeah. Well, so then that's self-serving, I think. So, I mean, I'm going to dip into boards a little bit, right? I love boards. That's self-serving right there. Like, are you not knowing that you're part of a big group that has a mission, that a team? Are you like sacrificing at least that part of yourself to be part of it? In this instance, it sounds like not, right? It sounds like they're self-serving and they just like, I want to be dictator, whatever, whatnot. Now, is that an active resistor? By this definition and what I'm thinking currently as we go through this little problem-solving activity, not necessarily, right? Dictatorship's a dictatorship, it's trying to control and take over, right? But with active resistors, there's like, let's say change as we relate it, and they're resistant to change. On top of it, they're infiltrating the team, planting like, let's say, seeds of resistance, and really being just that anti-person. Now, the solution to that we heard as we talked through it, right, was that, yeah, they might be there, but man, when they change over, when you've taken the time to go one-on-one with them, when you've taken the time to listen to them, to hear what they're saying in their heart, and you're able to bring that and kind of get them to neutral, you can change the world, change the game. There's hope, right? For someone who's an active resistor stance to get them to that side.
Can I just also just add to that too?
Mhm.
There's a really important role for an active resistor for a board or others, so that you don't get that group think where everything that is being presented is a great idea because it's not.
Yeah.
And so it's really important to have people that call out and make you think and challenge what you're trying to get through.
Absolutely.
In a spirit of mission though.
Exactly.
Right? Not
It's
just
just-
resisting for resistance, just to be contrarian. all the time.
Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly.
Delicate.
Yeah, it's definitely a fine line, and to each org, once you've seen one org, you've seen one org,
Mhm.
like everybody's different. But definitely, it's like, you're also blurring the lines between kind of active resistor antagonist and these kind of qualities, right? But I really love that we went through that and figured out how to kind of bring them over. And once again, just reiterating the hope that once they come over, boom, like your world changes. It's really fascinating when that happens. Okay, so CEN also believes that ACT is a great framework for leading others through change, right? Activate the change, create the plan, and transition the change. When you're activating the change, you want to clarify, once again, the goal, right? You want to make sure, because it's like the best way to market the effort is to make sure that you have a clear goal, right? Then you want to determine readiness, right? You want to take the organization's temperature. You want to find out, you want to find data. You want to find out who's bought in. You want to get input from people. When you get people's input, they feel validated, right? They feel heard. Like, Kathy, what do you think about this change? Well, let me tell you. Oh, well, thank you for your input, right? So just listening to people, gathering people's input, that's part of determining this readiness, right? And taking the temp. And then you want to also identify hurdles, right? Maybe there's cultural hurdles in the organization. Maybe there's organizational hurdles, right? Processes and policies. Maybe there's political hurdles, because we are swimming in an ecosystem, right? And you want to talk to people at all levels, right? This access thing that we keep coming back to. You want to make sure that you're talking to frontline workers. You want to make sure that you're talking to clients, to the community, directors, leaders, everything and everyone in between, right? And you want to expect pushback, right? You don't want to go in there thinking that you're not going to get pushback, right? You're setting yourself up for failure in that sense. You've got to look at it totally, right? You got to determine who might be there to push back, and then you can make a plan for that, right? And maybe they're in one of those roles, right? An antagonist role. So you can plan for that and maybe plan to meet them for coffee twice a week and kind of like get them into neutral, right? And then you want to establish a communication plan. You establish this through an ideal lens. It's an ongoing process, right? It could be a living document. Communication is key here, and you're gathering and you're giving information, right? This determines engagement, increases engagement when you do that. So I'm just going to ask out loud, how do we deliver information in our organization? Let's see. Who haven't I spoken on? Gina.
Usually through email, through Teams, meetings that way, and then in-person meetings.
Great.
As far as communication.
Yeah, so emails, meetings, this is how you're going to deliver communication, right? Newsletters, conversations, right? And then you're going to gather information too, right? You gather through focus groups, questionnaires, you might do one-on-one discussions, social media, right? Open forums. And this will help staff, right? This will help everyone. They'll appreciate this. And then they'll also get a clear vision of the end state. So you're going to create the plan next, right? We mentioned gathering data. You're going to determine support level. You might estimate your resources here, right? You might do a document review even, right, as part of it. So in document review, you might look at your SOPs, your standard procedures. You might need to recreate it. You might need to create it if you don't even have one, right? Some organizations don't even have standard operating procedures, right? And you might need to update it, like I said. And then you want to involve and engage others, right? How might we do this? So I'm going to ask that we get into groups again. All right, let's talk to the person next to us, and I'll give you 2 minutes once again. And let's just think of ways to involve and engage others.
Are the same people or different?
We can just turn to the person next to us. We don't have to get up this time. Okay? I hope this noise is okay for everyone. I know that sometimes there's audible sensitivities. So I hope that wasn't too jarring for folks. It looks like everybody got into really great discussion. So I think this is a great topic that we can discuss for a little bit more. I do want to lift up some things that I saw in the chat. Everybody else was talking to each other and I was kind of lonely, like, well, who am I talking to? So I started to look at the chat and it was really cool what I saw, right? So they're talking about two-way communication, listening, active listening, right? Active listening, making sure that everyone's part of the process even, right? A lot of great input here. Actively valuing folks. And let's see, creating a plan for their input and soliciting their input, right? What did we come up with here? I'm interested to hear. I haven't heard from, and I don't know your name, I apologize.
Victoria.
Victoria.
Yes.
Yes, would love to hear what you all talked about in your group.
So she was telling me about when introducing the change to her team, sort of framing it in a positive and possible light, and then holding spaces for those tough conversations, like what they may be struggling with implementation, ideas, and kind of bringing together a sense of community when combating it.
Love it. Community is my jam. Like creating that community, bringing positive light to the situation, and then having these difficult conversations if need be. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Anyone else? The group in the back, maybe? Kelly. I'm writing notes.
We're connecting for the coffee part.
Well, I talked a little bit about my communication style. We're a small team. And it's I try to be open doors as much as possible, and asking for feedback. We do meetings once a month for major events, like this is something new we've started. We're doing an every other Friday quick check-in, whether it's Zoom or in person, and that's been really cool.
And then for me, I had to reference my other job because I only have one staff member to communicate with, and to myself, I can talk to myself. But what we did early on, is 12 years ago, we did an audit, and they said that one of the issues we had with 1,400 employees was that we were like an hourglass, where things would be happening here, like board and cabinet, and things would be happening here at the school sites, and it would get stuck in the middle, kind of with the middle management principals and things. And so it wasn't free flow. So our goal was to make it free flow and have direct connect. And so so I changed things so that I met once a month with teachers, once a month with parents, once a month with kids, or even more, but I mean, definitely one. And so to try to open it up, and it was as much bringing their voice to me as it wasn't just like one way, like me just telling them what's going on, is like listening and taking the pulse. So that really helped, because then things didn't get clogged.
Yeah,
But
great.
it's an ongoing process.
Absolutely. I love hearing that. I loved seeing and hearing like the difference between a small team and a 1,400 people team, right? And then also still hearing like these ways of addressing maybe some barriers to communication, right? Especially with your example, Kelly, it's like going from the top to the bottom and eliminating that like bottleneck in the middle of the hourglass. That's really a great example. Can we all think of how that might relate to our organizations when we hear these stories? Do we come up with some possibilities for our own, for ourselves going through change in our conversations? Does anyone want to lift up anything that they heard or talked about? We're good. Everybody's like, okay, let's move on. All right then. So I'd be remiss. I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about resistance, right? It's here, like it's gonna be here just as much as change is. Resistance comes with that, right? Can I have Kathy? Can I have you read the quote?
Sure. Natural occurrence that is created by a widespread commitment to the current state. Didn't read that very well. Let me try it again. Natural occurrence that is created by a widespread commitment to the current state. Need to read it first.
Letting it sink in. What do you think about that? Are there thoughts that come up when you read this?
Natural.
Inertia. Steps.
Tell me more. So what do you mean by natural? So
So it's just saying that resistance is somewhat natural. It's a natural occurrence, the resistance to happen. So,
Okay. And then you said inertia. Tell me more about inertia.
You physics.
You have a scientist right here, right behind you too.
Get the same force if you push and resist. Don't.
Oh, so like, so for example, like you're talking about resistance in terms of like actual physics with like inertia. What is the quote they say when a yes, yes, or like when a brick wall hits something, I don't know, I could ruminate about
Solid
this.
object meets an immovable force.
Solid object meets an immovable force, right? Just like that. Anything else that comes up when it comes to this quote? You know, thinking about how it comes naturally. Lyle, I saw your hand raised.
Yeah, well, I think sometimes we get very comfortable in whatever routine we have, or just whatever system we have, or it could be, I mean, I think we all have it, like, you know, whether it could be like our TV provider or cell phone provider or something that we might complain about it, but it's like, we don't want to deal with the grief of going through change. So we get kind of comfortable even if we might not like it. So, but we still want to resist, you know, but it's getting over that hurdle before we can change, which I think is kind of natural, but there's always some pushback.
I love it. I love that we're talking physics and then we're talking psychology, right? Like all in a room with an artist leading it. But in any case, yeah, right? Like it's natural. People will resort to the mean and don't want to deal with the change. I'd rather be comfortable than change, right? And there's oftentimes that's the case, right? But thinking about how do we get people through that, right? As leaders, we have to, right? Change is inevitable. Resistance is inevitable. As leaders, how are we addressing that? How are we, you know, coming up with methods to do that? Are we bringing them to coffee twice a week? What are we doing, right? Are we going from the top, going to the bottom and actively listening, right? William Bridges was an authority on change and transition. And he said, you know, you got to describe the purpose, right? You got to give purpose. You got to explain the purpose of the change and the why. Make it crystal clear, right? Make sure that your people know, but you got to explain the purpose. You got to give them a vision. You got to give them the picture of the expected outcome, right? Paint the vision for folks. Be revolutionary. Be a leader, right? Let them know what it is. This is what I see. This is the future I'm talking about. I see it, right? Let them feel it too. You got to plan. We've been talking a lot about planning, like this whole time I'm talking about planning. And fun fact, and I don't know if I should reveal this about myself, I love to plan, but I'm like a general overview plan guy. It's like the details, oh man, okay, cool. But I can lead you to the revolution, right? But you got to create the plan, right? And you got to tell the employee what part they have in that plan, right? You got to let them know that they're part of the change and their contributions are going to help. Right? You got to make them feel valid. And I think we all came up with great stories. We've all been in great situations talking about that, right? About how, about employee buy-in and such. I'm going to ask us to get up again. Oh, Arthur, man, you're always asking us to do things. This time we're gonna get up, let's see, and we'll just choose another person in the room that you haven't talked to yet. And then I'm gonna ask, why is trust important? We're talking about psychology, right? Why is trust important in change? All right, so I'll give you all another 2-3 minutes here. Let's get up and move around, you know? Get up and move around. Once again, I'm gonna lift up some things in the room and in the chat, all right? First, I'll lift up the room. What were some great topics that you all discussed, or maybe some things about trust? Let's go with Angie in the back.
Repeat the first part of your question
Just like talk about what you all talked about.
in the way of,
I asked, why is trust important, right?
yeah, and I've been down that road. So I think we don't always ask, can or do you trust me? To our folks. And I've sat across from a table and I've said, I can't give you all the details. Do you trust me? Right? Because essentially I'm asking them, let me walk you across the 8-lane road blindfolded. And will that feel okay? Only if they trust me. And so I think trust goes undervalued as we lead. And we've got all the information, but we not necessarily can always share it. We can share it at some points or in pieces, but not all the time. And if your folks feel like you're hiding something from you without you acknowledging that you are, they're not going to trust you.
I love it. Thank you so much. This mic dropped. This mic just dropped right there, right? And I also wonder, you know, I think you're coming from a place of your own leadership, which I honor and appreciate, and want to also ask, like, who else are we leading in this too, right? Like, who else are we asking here? I'm not sure what frame of reference you were like discussing, right? But in my mind, I was thinking, okay, an executive director to staff maybe, right? And I know we talked about boards, right? And I know we were talking about some of our constituents, some of our staff and employee. But what are some other people that we need to gain trust from, right? Through change. What are some people, different types of people, right? Is it the community?
Yeah, our volunteers.
Volunteers.
Our donors.
Donors.
Who we serve.
Who we serve, members,
Committee members,
committee members, right? Is there anything else?
partners.
Partners. Oh, look at it. Everybody's brain's functioning today. Love it. I love it. Yeah. Is it the muffins? Oh, there's one left for me. Anything else? I see you smiling in the back. I think you want to say something. No?
I'm just enjoying the conversation.
Yeah.
Just good energy.
Yeah, definitely. Right. And so, yeah, right. It's not just, you know, our staff, but it is the entirety of all we serve, right? Like this community we're building, et cetera, right? I want to lift up some things in the chat. They started talking about healing and I was like, wait, you all are talking about healing? They're talking about creating trust opens the door to healing. And I was like, man, you are talking my language, right? And we're talking about healing, right? What does that look like? What does that look like when we're creating trust for our communities, right? And what does our communities healed look like, right? Maybe there might be some transgression in this change even as we've gone through it. And maybe some employees or, you know, board members are disgruntled. Maybe they're in the, you know, antagonist role now, right? They're like, oh man, I didn't like that, right? And they're kind of holding on to it, right? So what does healing look like there, right? How can you bridge that trust again? Right?
Sometimes if you leave a role that was really hard, when you step into a new role with a different organization, it takes a while to build up that trust too. Because once you get burned, it's really hard to like walk into something just like whoop, 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 everything's fine here when you've had the experience of
Yeah.
not being able to trust someone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I feel that the way you're talking about it, it's like, ooh, it's big shoes. It's a big deal, right? And so we got to think about how we lead others through change through that. Yeah.
I have experience of working for someone that I knew I couldn't trust. And the way that I dealt with it, because I loved my job, was I look at everything like a soccer field, basically a soccer game. And so that person was a field condition. So when you step onto the soccer field, how's the grass? How's that, is it wet or holes in it? How's your referee? How's the other team? How are your players? Maybe your best players are on the bench or whatever. And so you still have to play that game, right? So that soccer game. So if you take people at work that are difficult field conditions, but you still got to go through the game, you adapt, you adjust, you know what you're facing and you work around it. And I think that for me, that was a really helpful way to work with this individual that was my boss at one time, years ago. I don't want to name anyone,
Right.
But anyway, it was just very helpful to like still go, I got to get my job done because I love my job and I value my job and I value what I do, but I got to like deal with this
Right.
field condition.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you for lifting that up. I appreciate hearing that story, and your commitment to the game, right? To the job, right? That's so important. I'd value you and I'd put you on the committed side. I'm like, if I hear that when we're doing coffee, I'm like, all right, you're one of my change partners, right? We're going to do this thing together, right? And establishing that trust.
So another thing we talked about was, vulnerability and being able to, kind of recover after someone you can't trust or you don't feel like you can trust is, learning to be vulnerable and also accepting that you are going to need to be vulnerable even if you haven't established full trust in that person.
Yeah. Yeah, vulnerability. That's a big deal too, right? It does. It's like the chicken or the egg. Are you vulnerable before you create trust, or are you trusting and then vulnerability, right? But it's like, wait, what? They kind of go hand in hand a little bit, right? At least in my head, it's like, yeah, you got to be vulnerable to establish that trust, right? Great topics, y'all. I know we have a psychologist in the room, so like, wow. I was like, yeah, right? Like all of these things are great points. Whenever I type in the chat, I gotta click off of the chat. So we're gonna get to this piece here, transitioning the change, right? The T. So we're gonna design the implementation, right? Going back to the plan, right? Sounds like the first step. It's logical. Design the implementation. Just remember though, when you're doing that, especially even like a second ago, we went through this, right? We're identifying people, we might just think it's our staff, but then it like becomes bigger, right? It's not just our staff, it's the community, it's the volunteers, it's the people we serve, right? So when you're doing that, just know that it's a whole system, right? It's not just a single element. And then maybe one plan might not work, right? Maybe like an action plan might be good, but maybe you need to do something else with that as well. Maybe you need a strategic plan. Maybe you need a roadmap. Right? How many of you all have heard of a roadmap? How many of y'all used a roadmap during summer? Kind of. We have like Google Maps now, right? But yeah, a roadmap would be great in this situation, right? When we're thinking about transitioning through change. A roadmap, it's kind of like if you remember roadmaps, you have the place, you know where the destination is, right? So you know your intended outcome. And then you'd want to like specify actions to achieve that goal, right? That outcome is what you would add to this roadmap, right? You'd identify completion dates for like actions. You'd have like dedicated resources. Maybe you're reaching out to consultants from CEN, to help you implement this, right? And then you're also ensuring that level of investment, right? Not just in resources, in people resources and financial resources, just to get through the change. And then you want to assign responsibility, right? And remember, accountability, because accountability makes us move differently, remember? It just makes us like get to that. And then, just like when you're on the road, right? And you have to stop for gas unexpectedly, or you take a side, oh, I want to see this viewpoint, right? You might have that roadmap, but you got to plan for maybe something unexpected too, right? And being able to be adaptable, shifting, right? Agile. I see that word a lot, agile lately. So I think that's a trending word if you ever want to use that, right? And then you want to evaluate the effort, right? You want to evaluate the impact of this change. Do we do what we said we wanted to do? What was the impact like? You want to evaluate the process, right? Do we have evaluations for our processes? Right? Are we evaluating the evaluation? Right? You want to have that. How well did we do it? Right? And then you want to evaluate the leader. Right? How well did the leader perform? Getting feedback on that. Right? I got another question here. Why do people follow leaders? I'm not going to ask you to get up this time. I'm just going to put it out there. Why do people follow leaders? I'd love to call on Denise. Exactly.
I know half the people in this room.
That's fine. It's fine.
I think for an organization I work for now, really a collaborative team. So we follow our leader, but we're trying to work flat structure. So it's being side by side with the people on your team. You're following a leader just for the direction, but you're all going in the same direction.
Great. Anyone else? I'm not shy to call on people, obviously. Angie.
I have followed a leader blindfolded because I knew she would be the first one in the ditch and then help us in. And then she would help us out without getting out of the ditch.
Yeah.
So I trusted her, but I had faith that she would not lead us somewhere where she wouldn't go.
Yeah, it was that. I have a follow-up question to that because, like, man, every word you've spoken today just gives me chills, right? Like, how did you get that trust so? I don't know the timing of it either, right? But like, I'm just going to describe it as quickly, or how did you just trust like that,
I think it's her leading by example consistently, her owning her mistakes and her being vulnerable and asking for help. And so she, as a leader, she was fantastic and just a very honest person. It was easy to follow her. You wanted to follow her because you knew she was going to take you to do great things, to do fun things.
So you believed in her, is
I
what you're
believe in
saying.
her, yeah, still do.
Absolutely.
Can I embarrass you, Arthur?
Sure. Well, no. I saw Lyle's hand up and then I'll take it.
It's fine. I just want a quick follow up on Andy's. I think in some groups, the people, a lot of times people are resistant to actually step up and take charge or want to lead. They will help, but they don't want to be the main voice. So it's almost something that somebody who just speaks louder kind of becomes a de facto leader, whether they want to or not. And hopefully that evolves into the person that Andy was talking about, where they aren't just becoming the dictator, they're the ones that are actually going into the ditch first. It's like in the battlefield, they're leading the charge as opposed to staying back and ordering everybody else to go ahead of them.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Absolutely. Thank you. I see that, like, as you described that, I'm thinking of that, just that, like, that split in the road, right? Where they could be just like that dictator and hold back and just tell everybody to go ahead. Right. And then the other side is like, oh, okay. Like this, that is going to lead the charge, be with the charge, etc. I saw your hand up, Andy.
To expand just a little bit, reversing the thought, we as leaders have to have the utmost trust in our team, right? So I just used this analogy yesterday, which is a maestro of a band. That maestro doesn't necessarily know how to play every single instrument. They're trusting that the band they hired, the individual players, is gonna do their job, right?
Yeah.
But they're gonna stand up there and cue everyone, right? And I think that's very similar to the way we lead. Like, we don't know how to do every single piece. But if we hire the right people, then we entrust them to do their job.
Absolutely. This microphone is still down here, by the way. It's like never got picked up. That's so great. Yeah, right. Trust is a two-way street. Okay.
So Arthur is our leader, you know, he's the president for this term. Why do we follow him? Well, these two people, Denise and Arthur, started the Filipino Barrio Fiesta at the Banquet Plaza. And that has been a game changer for our organization. So we followed them, we followed him, because he's shown where he can take this organization and bring it out to the community and reach out to all sorts of people. And we believe his vision. And so, Arthur, you're a leader. We're following you because we trust you. We know we love your vision, and you're going to take us further than we've ever gone before. Up in this.
Thank you. And we're going together, right? Like, that's the thing. I think that piggybacks on what Angie was saying too, is like, it's two-way. Yeah, sure, I'm there, but I'm there with you. And I think that's what we all discussed. And to kind of just wrap it up too, right? Like, that's the thing, all of these things that we discussed, that's within each of us. Like, all of us has gone through change. We're leading through change. We're showing by example. And it's important that we do that, right? We came up with ideas and stories today. We heard from each other, and hopefully we have things that we can bring into the fold in our organization to serve our organization, our communities, accomplish our mission. What are we here for, right? These things, that's what's important. I do want to say thank you again so much for being here. It's been an amazing group. There's a lot of good energy here on Zoom in the chat. It's wonderful. Thank you all so much. And with that, we have Q&As. I left some time for questions and answers.
I'm gonna check on chat and make sure.
If there's any questions, let's come up with some answers.
Well, all this presentation, they keep thinking about, you know, the 80-20. And I was talking to Maria about this, and she was saying, yeah, it's looking more like 90-10.
So one thing that usually comes up, one question, and like, I don't know if this is like because of the pandemic, will we get a copy of the slides? Yes. Just letting you all know now. I think that Common Point, and thank you to Common Point once again, is going to upload it on their website, so you can download it from there. Is that what I heard correctly?
We'll have to ask Carol.
Oh,
She's the boss
yeah.
of all of that, but it is usually on our member part of our website. And it's also recorded, and it will be placed on the video portion of our website. That I know for sure.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? I'm such an artist. I forgot to talk about institutionalizing the changes. I apologize. So I'm just going to do like 1 minute on institutionalizing the change. So to institutionalize change, it doesn't happen overnight, right? So institutionalizing change is like, here's an effect of the pandemic. I became a plant dad, everyone. I just want to say, I'm now a plant dad, thank you. And so with that, I'm monitoring change within plants, and it's constant, it's slow, it's evolving, but I'm paying attention. Like every day I'm looking at my plants, they're changing in every which way. And I'm just like, I need to do this to it. I need to prune it. I need to water it more. I need to back up off watering. Oh, you're so dry. I'm so sorry. Right? So institutionalizing changes like that, right? You've got to pay attention. It's going to take time. You've got to monitor it and you've got to give it care. Thank you all for taking just that last tidbit that I totally forgot to say. So I appreciate that. Yes, and that. Are there any other questions?
Now I can't help but ask the question, the follow-up, I'm sorry, if you can go. When you said that, I think there's a difference between systems change and change that is centered around an individual.
Mhm.
And there's always that, I guess, kind of fear that, that some of the things really didn't stick, that they were around a person
Mm.
rather than embedded in the way things are gonna be. I just didn't know if you had a comment on.
Yeah, you know,
on that.
and I'll open it up to everyone too. What is everyone's thoughts, right? But really, like for a system change, what's the evaluation process, right? Like, do you have an evaluation process? Do you have a map? Do you have clear goals? Maybe what is it? Key indicators as it moves along, right? To see that and knowing that too, right? Like, hey, we're going. We jumped the hurdle. Oh, we're gonna regress a little bit because maybe that's how it is. We're human. Okay, let's keep moving it. Let's go further, right? It's that attention and that care that you bring to these processes and policies even as well. I hope that helps, or is it just like too left field? Yeah, does anybody else have any thoughts around that? Michael?
Yeah, how do you recommend incorporating other people's viewpoints without losing the initial mission of the change?
Yeah, awesome. That's a great question. So how do you incorporate other people's viewpoints without losing the mission of the change, right? So when you're doing, it's got to be crystal clear. This mission, I'm always going to revert back to it. It's like, listen, people pay consultant like thousands, millions of dollars, all these things to create a mission, right? And so like this mission has to be, I don't know, perfect is the word, but it's like, I don't want to say perfect because then it's just like, it has to be flexible as well, right? But this mission is everything. And so there's that and the buy-in to that, right? And then including people's thoughts around that is, there's processes for that, right? You can have the groups, you can have the listening sessions or, have group discussions around it. Are there any, well, let's open it up. Are there any other things towards that? Shayna?
I would just add, Lila and I were talking about this, and we were saying how setting some expectations and boundaries with folks, kind of what Angie was saying earlier about bringing people into the process with trust and all of that. I think part of where that trust can be built is to say, I really want your input as a team, a department, a group, an individual. Please know I'm listening. I may not be able to take 100% of your advice, your input, your feedback. I will hear it all, I will process it all, and it will weigh into my decision making. And I think that can go really far with people, because if you don't set that out at the front end, they can feel like, well, why did I even waste my time? Why did I tell you when you're gonna do the opposite? You've never listened to what our team says. But to be able to set that at the front end, and if you're really firing on all cylinders, be able after or as you're making the decision to be able to say, this was the process, this is what I considered, and this is how we ended here. I think that goes a long way.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I hope that helped. Great. Thank you all so much. Okay. Some takeaways. Would love to hear. Did you all learn anything, or maybe you didn't learn anything? I mean, that's fair too. I'm okay with honesty.
Thank you, this is really good, and I told them it's really nice to see a young adult here.
My takeaway comes from the doctor in the back, Kelly. What was it? Change imposed, just change opposed. That I have like a saying of my day when I hear like a little jewel, and you got it today.
Yeah,
That was really
and wasn't an original, someone else said it.
I'm still gonna credit you.
I heard it, okay.
Change imposed is change opposed.
It's a good one. Anyone else with takeaways? No? Okay. Well, I have a request if possible. So I have a QR code up. We do these feedback surveys. Would love to hear feedback around the presentation. What was good, what was bad, how can I do better, or it was perfect. Either way, I invite it all and appreciate it so much. I see you all taking out your phones for the QR code. It's like this. I guess I should model it as well. You know, like this. Exactly. Perfect. Thank you all in the chat. And then we have some upcoming programs. So, oh, you all. Yep.
Everybody know how to use the QR code?
COVID taught me that with our menus in restaurants.
See the culture shift?
Change is good.
Thank you all. So some upcoming programs, we have strategic planning coming up next week and grant funding essentials. Grant funding essentials is a great program. We have nonprofit advocacy towards the end of the month. And then we have management basics at the beginning of September. Towards the middle of September, we have our IDEAL program. So if we remember IDEAL from the beginning, inclusion, diversity, equity, access, and liberation, we have a 2-day program with that, where we do a deep dive for ourselves and our organizations. I do want to toot my horn and say that compassionate leadership is like a presentation I created, and I'm going to have that in December as well. So, oh, I see you trying to take a picture of that.
I can't write all that.
So where are these gonna be presented?
So this will be on Zoom.
Okay.
Yeah, and you can also find out more on our website at
Got it.
cn.org. Yeah, thank you. Although we can go in person, obviously I'm here now, if we want to talk about it. And then, yeah, if you'd like to stay connected with us, my name is Arthur and at cn.org. Once again, thank you all so much. Man, I appreciate you all for being here, your energy. Awesome. Thank you.
Well, okay, well, I'd like to thank everyone for coming today, and I'd also like to thank Arthur for coming. We have
you.
this, or for this great presentation, we have a small gift for you.
Oh, thank you.
And,
Appreciate it. Thank you.